Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Onboard, Not Overboard, Accelerating New Hire Training. My name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with Biz Library, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on your screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewer. So this is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar, and you can also communicate with us through the question box. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it, and it'll expand for you. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line, and you can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. We like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points, please feel free to send them over through the question box located within the control panel. I like to weave the questions in as it relates to what we're discussing in the webinar, and then I'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A as well. I am recording the webinar today, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording as well as the slides and follow-up information available on our blog after today's session. So that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. You can also download the slides for today as we get started. You can see them in the link to the slides in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should have also received a link to the slides in the reminder email that you received this morning. Happy to say that today's session has been approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. Just a quick correction, it is in fact the Onboard, Not Overboard webinar. My mistake on the title showing on the slide that you're seeing on your screen, so sorry about that. But today's webinar is approved for 1 hour CE credit. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's webinar. I'll also send a follow-up email that'll include a link to the certificate within 24 hours. So again, I'll share the link to the certificate at the end of today's session, and I'll also email out a link to the certificate within 24 hours. Again, my name is Jessica. I am on the marketing team with Biz Library. I graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia with a degree in journalism. I've been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. Very active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of Biz Library at Biz Library and also at my own account at Jess L. Petrie. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around training and development, learning and development, human resources, and marketing. So if you're on either of those social networks, we'd love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for Biz Library. Chris has also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning development and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. So here at Biz Library, we kindly refer to Chris as a recovering lawyer. Chris is also active in social media, so you can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne STL, and he's also on LinkedIn, so I'm sure you'd love it if you'd reach out and connect as well. Just to give you a quick background on Biz Library is a leading provider of online employee training and e-learning solutions. The award-winning content library contains more than 7,000 online employee training videos covering every business training topic. So that includes communication skills, leadership and management, sales and customer service, compliance training, desktop computer skills, and more. Additionally, Biz Library's LMS, or Learning Management System, and social learning technology platform help HR and training leaders improve and manage employee learning. All right, so it seems like I have a quick poll question to kind of kick things off, but we're competing with a couple of big, well, I guess Apple's all over the place, like right now at this time. And then there's also the Brandon Hall Awards are going on, so that's kind of exciting for us as nominees, and I guess we won a couple awards. So we're excited about that stuff that's going on now, but that's besides the point. We're here today, and this is the poll question that we're kicking off things with. So you should see it pop up on your screen in just a minute. So how would you describe your new hire training? Is it A, well-planned and integrated with organizational goals and culture? B, we conduct an orientation for new employees, however it isn't strategic. C, we cover the basics. After that, they're on their own. D, sink or swim, or E, something else.
Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm good. How are you?
I don't know. I'm waiting to get my iPhone 6.
Oh, right. I don't know. All I was looking at, I was perusing my Twitter right before we got on, and it was exploding with Apple stuff. So who knows?
Yeah,
All those crazy
it's all
Apple.
over the
All
place.
right.
Yeah, this is a great webinar, though. This succession planning is talk about all over the media right now. This is really, really front and center in the HR and learning and development and talent management space for the first part of this year. So this is a timely topic, and we're very happy that all of you have joined us. I'm anxious to see what the interactivity today is, and we get usually really interesting questions during today's session.
Yes, and please keep the questions coming in. It makes for a more engaging webinar, so we've done this one a couple of times, so we want to make sure that we're covering things that you're interested in. So again, let us know through chat if you have questions, comments, discussion points. All right, so it looks like we've had decent participation in the poll. I'll go ahead and close it out, share the results with everyone. So it looks like we've got 30% say well-planned and integrated with our organizational goals and culture. B, let's see, 38% said we conduct an orientation for new employees, however it's not strategic. 28% said they cover the basics. 2% said sink or swim, and then E, something else.
Yeah, interesting stuff. This is, I love these polls. Jessica, this is one of our better ones too. And this is really evenly split. I don't recall that we've had one quite this even. Do you?
Yeah, actually, a lot of times I feel like sink or swim's a little bit higher, and the cover the basics a little bit higher. So it looks like we have an audience with us today that has a pretty good grasp on where they're going with onboarding and new hire training. But nonetheless, I think we have some ideas that'll be beneficial no matter what area you're kind of looking at or initiative you're looking to roll out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, close or hide the poll. Chris, we've got kind of 3 high-level things that we're hoping that you'll take away from today's session. So if you want to run us through those, and then we'll keep going.
All right, let me get everything rolling here and make sure that you see the what we hope you'll learn slide. Is that displaying correctly?
Sure, good to go.
All right, well, super. It always takes just a second for my screen to catch up, so good stuff. Well, thank you all very much for attending the webinar today. Jessica mentioned that I did leadership development consulting for a number of years, and this is a topic that I did a lot of consulting work in, strategic planning and high potential development, leadership development. So this is something that I've been passionate about for a long time, both personally and professionally. So this is very near and dear to my heart, and this is an area that I think I find fascinating for a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of sort of legacy theory and thinking floating around out there, which some of it's helpful, but the part that I find most intriguing is the emerging best practices that we're beginning to see that blend a lot of great onboarding and early stage employee development with a whole different look at the way we need to develop our employees to begin with. And it's a fascinating space. So this is really an interesting part of the whole strategic approach to employee development and training that I think we really need to step back and really begin to examine a little bit differently. And it starts with this first thing we want to talk about. What is strategic onboarding compared to tactical onboarding? Both parts are important. We're going to get to that. We've got 5 best practices that we want to share with you to accelerate the new hire training process. one of the things that's most frustrating for all of us as a manager that's brought new employees on, as an HR professional, as a learning development professional, is the time it takes frequently for new employees to really get up to speed, that is, for them to really become productive members of our teams. And we sometimes just miss the boat on getting that done right. And then last but not least, how do we measure the impact of these programs? I mean, ultimately, we have to be able to make a sound business case and sound business decisions based upon good information, which, again, begins to tie into all of this interesting emerging thought leadership in this space, which I find so fun and so interesting to think about. This is, I wish I could say that I've never experienced this in a new hire situation, but I have. Welcome to the company. Someone will be along soon to install your defense shield and haul away your confidence. It's too often that our new hire orientation and new hire training and onboarding feels more like this than it should, but kind of an interesting and kind of humorous way to begin getting this pulled together. This, I think, is a really useful place to begin our conversation about, really how to accelerate the impact of our onboarding training and how to get employees up to speed more effectively and more quickly, and to talk about the difference between strategic versus tactical onboarding. And I want to start with the latter, not the former, tactical, very quickly. Tactical onboarding are sort of the basic steps that are associated with getting a new employee in the door. The I-9 checking, getting the benefits set up, explaining benefits, getting the employee handbook to them, getting their workspace pulled together. Those details, the details, are really important. This is one of these things where you get one chance to make a first impression. I know that seems trite, but it really and truly, it really is important. I mean, just think about the anxiety that we've all experienced starting a new job. And I've started lots of them over the course of my career, so I have, unfortunately, have more experience than many at this. It is stressful. So you want to walk into that new position and feel like you've made a good choice. And we want to make sure that those new employees feel like they made a good choice. So we want to make sure that their workstation is set up, that they have a phone extension that works, that they've got email set up. And if you can have a welcome email in their inbox, we just had a new employee start on our team, and we had a couple of emails waiting. Just the smile on her face made a huge difference. She knew immediately that her starting was important to us, that we had taken the time to think about her getting here. Those details matter. So you have to do the tactical part of it first. You never get to having a strategic impact if you miss the boat on the tactical stuff. So don't leave those things undone. All right, so enough of that. That's not really the point of today's webinar. The point of today's webinar is really the strategic piece of it. And there are all kinds of important bottom line business benefits to doing this well. We have great data, great research, which we're going to share some of this with you, that shows that when onboarding is done well, effectively, adopting the best practices we're going to talk about, we see higher levels of long-term job satisfaction, higher degrees of organizational commitment, lower long-term employee turnover, that's a good one, higher performance levels, more career effectiveness, and lower levels of stress. This is a great way to think about it. I love this term. Onboarding, also known as organizational socialization, refers to the mechanism through which new employees acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, and behaviors to become effective organizational members and insiders. This is from a handbook on the Handbook of Organizational Industrial Psychology. I have to confess, I'd never seen this term, organizational socialization, used until Jessica and I had started doing research for this specific webinar. But as soon as I saw that, I just fell in love with the term. It is really a great way to think about what we're attempting to accomplish with an effective onboarding program. So this gets back to the point I was making earlier. Got to do the tactical things right, but ultimately this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to socialize people. Bring them into the organization so they eventually know what they need to know, they exhibit the behaviors that they need to exhibit, and they have the skills necessary to become effective organizational members and insiders. They become one of us. They become part of the we. When we talk about our organization, the we is inclusive. That's the trick to this. Anyway, I think it's an absolutely wonderful way to think about it. Jessica, I know when we were first doing this research, what was your reaction to this term? I know you and I both were a little surprised to find this.
You know, I think it was really effective in explaining something that's not so easy to explain. So basically, you know, you can say, okay, here are the basic processes and procedure. Here are maybe some of your expectations in your new job role, but it isn't always laid out the things that will acclimate you to the organization. So who are key people that you need to know? Who do you go for this type of information? That can be some of the hardest thing to navigate when you're coming on into a new company. It's, okay, so who am I supposed to connect with? Who's helpful? Or just kind of like the politics of it. So I think it was the reason that it stood out to us is because it kind of defined it so well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's just a great explanation. I concur completely. So here are some benefits. We've got a couple of slides actually to share with you. Benefits of a strong onboarding program, and they really kind of flow two ways. There's benefits as an employee, but importantly from the perspective, you know, strategic perspective, benefits from the company. And this comes from some research published by Burson by Deloitte called Strategic Onboarding. So from the employee's perspective, become comfortable and familiar with their job roles, learn about the company culture and job-related resources, which again, going back to Jessica's very great comment about the socialization, exactly right. I mean, the idea of when you have questions about these things, who can you talk to? Who are your resources? Which ties right into that next one, start to build relationships and networks. And by the way, we've got some data that ties specifically to that point in just a moment. But from the company's perspective, look at these bottom line benefits. Improve retention, increase time to productivity, increase the visibility of new hires, make sure that people are productive. I mean, these are fabulous benefits. I mean, this is great stuff. So, I mean, this is just, those are wonderful. So then the next piece of this, from the employee, align expectations of jobs and careers. You know, how many of us had that kind of a conversation and understanding early on when we started a job? Not very often. Feel engaged and valued, receive immediate feedback. All of these things, particularly in this work environment, are important, and we know how critical feedback is just for broad levels of employee engagement. And then from the company's perspective, improve communications, improve customer satisfaction, improve the company brand. Again, data-driven research from Burson by Deloitte that, you know, really helps tie these benefits to the bottom line. Some additional research that we've uncovered, if you don't look at this bit of research, it's published each year by Gallup, and it's a research project that's titled State of the American Workplace 2013. They publish this report every year. Employee engagement drops by 8% after the first 6 months of employment, from 52% to 44%. Again, going back to what I said before, we get that great chance to make that first impression. Employees are never more engaged than when they first start their job. This is when we get a chance to really begin to explain and teach what we're about as a company, what we're attempting to accomplish, and we want to take advantage of this heightened level of engagement in order to do that. There's an Aberdeen benchmark report. By the way, Aberdeen Research, great, if you don't use these benchmark reports, they're fabulous. But effective onboarding improves retention rates by 52%, customer satisfaction by 53%, and time to productivity by 60%. So some fabulous data that, again, goes right to that bottom line benefit. Jessica, I'm seeing some questions in here.
So, Chris, I posed an informal poll when we were at towards the beginning about, you know, what our attendees' experience was, how they would describe their experience as a new hire. So it's an informal poll that we sometimes do. I thought maybe you caught it, but I guess you didn't. So I was just sharing what some of the attendees said about their experience as a new hire. So looking at the collective, what people have shared as a group, maybe that's some of the things that we can bring in and understand about our onboarding program. So some of the things that people have shared were, stressful, trying to figure it out on my own, well planned with HR, but the rest of onboarding, depending on the manager, could be sink or swim. So there's some disconnect between when they're handed off to their manager and the level of support from the manager. Horrible. Welcome to the team. Look at our website to see what we do. So there's a kind of a different take. Some people said overload on information. Some said they were unsure of role, goals, what to do, what I'm doing, etc. So there's a wide range. I've been adding them into chat, but I thought it would be helpful.
I see one from Robert. Wouldn't reduce time to productivity be a benefit, reducing a time of learning curve? And Robert, you're exactly right, and this data helps illustrate that. So yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm understanding where these comments are coming from. Great stuff. And yeah, thank you. Keep those coming. This is great to listen to and hear. Really good stuff. This is another bit of information from that strategic onboarding bit of research that Burson published. I wish I could take credit for having found this. I can't. Jessica found this. Great work on your part, by the way. But this is a wonderful visual explanation of the power of an effective onboarding program. So if you think about that first 18 months, this is the most vulnerable time for new hires to leave. If we can keep them through 18 months, we've got a pretty good chance at hanging on to people for a while, particularly in this marketplace. It's, lots and lots of change, very volatile job market. But for clerical staff, the average time to reach productivity is between 8 and 12 weeks. So with an effective onboarding program, we can move that forward. We can add 2-3 weeks. For professional staff, the average time to productivity, according to the research, is 18 to 22 weeks. Now, obviously, this is going to vary depending upon the productivity role, the organization, levels of experience, et cetera. But you can begin to see with an effective onboarding program, with an effective development program right out of the chute, if we can shave 4 to 6 weeks off that for professional staff, how much is that worth? How much is their productivity worth over the course of a week, 2 weeks, a month? And then average time for productivity for executives, 24 to 28 weeks. I mean, it's 6 to 7 months. If we can shave that by a month or 6 weeks, how much productivity do we pick up? And then think about it from the employee's perspective. When employees come to us as a new hire, going back to the note earlier about the level of engagement, when they're highly engaged, when they're more likely to be engaged, are they more apt to want to do a good or bad job? They're more motivated to do well, right? So if we can put the tools in their hands more quickly, more effectively to perform at a high level, at the acceptable level that we want, we have all kinds of benefits flowing both ways. The company gets a productive employee more quickly. We're going to increase the level of job satisfaction from employees because they're going to know that they're contributing at the level we expect them to. I mean, just all kinds of things happen. But look at these numbers. 1/3 of managers fail at their new job role. 1/3 of them. 1 in 3. And we've got some data that helps put some clarity around why that happens, but 50% of the workforce want to change jobs every 3 to 5 years. So we are going to have to come to grips with getting employees up to speed more quickly if we're going to churn our workforce more frequently. And in this job market, I think that's going to become the new normal. We're going to see more and more employees shifting jobs, changing employers more frequently. It's just, I think that's just going to be the reality. So here they are. Here are 5 best practices that our research tells us will really improve the effectiveness of our onboarding programs. Plan ahead, and we'll give you some specifics about that. But integrate company goals and culture into the program. We want to make sure that we outline expectation goals and success criteria. I actually saw some of the comments from the informal poll that said that wasn't done very well. That is absolutely something that's important to do. Utilize technology and online training. This can really rapidly increase the time to productivity, reduce the learning curve if you can provide information and knowledge much more quickly. And the 5th, and perhaps the most important of the 5 best practices, is you have to involve the managers. And it's not enough just to say, we've got a new employee starting, we need your help. You're going to have to show them what success in terms of their involvement looks like. You got to lead them, show them, teach them, train them. So it's going to be a real important piece of this. Okay, so planning ahead. What does this involve? What does this look like? One of the things that you have to begin to understand is employees are going to do well when you bring the right employees in the door in the first place. I know that seems sort of I know that seems sort of like a kind of one of those, well, yeah, that's pretty obvious sort of observations, but it really is a critical piece of this. So you have to understand the needs of your organization, your future needs and potential gaps in terms of performance, where do you expect to be, what are you going to need. Make sure that your hiring managers understand how to conduct behavior-based interviewing, non-judgmental, and hire for character and fit. Jessica, I see a question in there asking me to clarify the increase versus reduced time to productivity. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so that was what Robert's original question was kind of alluding to. So, can you just clarify what you mean by increased time to productivity versus reduced time to productivity? We likely think that we want to reduce the time to productivity, but in some cases you're saying increase. So I think it's just all in how you're interpreting it, but I just wanted to offer clarification.
Yeah, and if I've misspoken, I apologize. This chart, which is outstanding, gives us the average time to reach a productive level. And by productivity, what we mean is to reach the expected level of performance by job role. Okay, so say 24 to 28 months for executives. So let's say vice president of marketing. It's going to take about 6 to 7 months for a new vice president of marketing to perform at the level that we want you to. With an effective onboarding program, the objective would be to shorten the time, reduce the time to productivity to maybe 5 months, so that you get you get more productive time out of the employee in that first 18 months of their tenure with your organization. So for professional staff, the average time to productivity is 18 to 22 weeks. The objective would be to reduce that time from, say, 14 to 20 weeks, so you get more productive time earlier in their tenure with you. Does that make sense, Jessica?
Yep, just wanted to clarify. I think there was one from the Versend slide that said increase, and I think that's where the confusion was. So I'm going to check back on that research. But yeah, thanks.
Right. Apologize for the confusion. Okay, so again, hiring for character and cultural fit ultimately is going to be the secret to getting these great people in. Larry Broughton, who's the CEO of Broughton Hotels, but this guy is a fantastic speaker. If you ever get a chance to see Larry present, please don't miss out on this opportunity. He was a keynote speaker at our client conference last year. He had a great way of phrasing this. He said, a good attitude won't guarantee victory, but a bad one will guarantee defeat. And he talked about hiring for motivation. He said the three things that really matter the most in his experience were motivation, integrity, and capacity. That those were the things that in his experience really helped guarantee that he had the right person. How are they motivated? Are they a person of integrity? And capacity. In other words, can they grow? Can they learn? Can they learn enough to grow into the job that you need them to? So the second of the 5 best practices is you got to link your onboarding program to your company goals and your company culture. So your corporate mission, strategy, and goals, how are they aligned with what you're doing? How are you working during your onboarding to make sure that new hires really understand what it is your organization is attempting to do? And I'm not talking about some flowery, mission, vision, value statement. Okay, we have those. Everybody's got those. I'm talking about the nuts and bolts, down real life, rubber meets the road mission. What is it? What's the value that you bring to your customers? Ultimately, that's your mission, isn't it? So it's simple here at Biz Library. We try to bring a high-quality, low-cost learning solutions to our clients. No more, no less. That's it. our strategy, here are the things that we're trying to do it, here are our goals. So what's your organization's mission? What is it that what's the value that you're bringing to your customers? That's really how to approach that. So get the jargon and fluff out of it, make it simple, make it easy to understand, so that when your employees begin to look at, your HR practices and your sales practices and your customer service practices and your customer support practices and your logistics and your shipping and receiving, everything begins to tie to that. How are the things that we're doing helping us deliver that value to our customers? And then how are the strategies that we are adapting supporting the delivery of value to our customers, and what are the goals related to delivering value to our customers? So make sure that that's all linked together. And then explain clearly how each employee's role impacts the achievement of those goals. What's their role in delivering the strategy? What's their role in delivering the mission? One of the things that I haven't always learned from every mistake I've made over the course of my career. I'd like to think that I have, but I haven't, just to be perfectly frank about it. But one of the things that I think that I have learned in working with teams, particularly with sort of the highly motivated, highly skilled bunch of people that I work around now, is with respect to this mission, strategy, and goals and the employee's impact, is an understanding of explaining the why we do things. You can tell people, well, here are the processes, here are the procedures, here's the manual, here, and explain that stuff to them, and they can. And many people will go off and execute on that, and you'll get some level of performance, and maybe even some satisfactory levels of performance. But if you really want people's heart into what you're doing, you really want to engage them, it really is important that they understand the why. And ultimately, that becomes the motivation, the drive for engagement. It's the why. People have to believe that there's a purpose behind what you're doing, that the why matters. And we frequently forget that. And I think, again, going back to the idea that, employees are most engaged early on in their tenure with us, don't squander that opportunity to emphasize the why for employees. It is important to emphasize that why part of your message with respect to mission, strategy, goals, and the employee's impact. We don't just have this job because we need somebody in that chair. We have this job because you're going to contribute to the success of the team by. And the team contributes to the success of the organization by. And this team contributes to the success of our clients by. And those contributions begin to illustrate the why that job is important. People can do remarkable things when they understand why they're doing them. And we don't do enough of that as leaders and managers, and I think as learning and development professionals, we can really impact our company culture and the attainment of company goals if we will take it upon ourselves to step back occasionally and help our colleagues and our internal clients understand the why of what we're doing. Which gets to this next point. I know it seemed like a tangent, but it really wasn't. The information flow and how informal learning occurs within your organization. This is another piece of new employee orientation onboarding that we frequently don't pay enough attention to. Jessica kind of hinted at it a little earlier in the session when she talked about getting introduced and making sure that she knew who to go to and when she needed to have questions answered. Every organization has both a formal and an informal flow of information. The informal flow of information is actually the more powerful and influential flow of information in every single organization. Every organization has opinion shapers and opinion leaders. Think of them as those go-to employees. If you have a question about the history of this company, go talk to Frank, because he's been here forever and he can tell you everything about it. Frank's a go-to person. Hey, Alicia, she's been in customer service for 15 years. She knows every customer service story there is. She can help you with that. She may not be a manager. She may not be a supervisor, but Alicia's a go-to person. She knows it, and she'll share it. That's information flow, and that's how informal learning occurs in your organization. Make sure your new hire employees understand those things, okay? The next big piece of this is building, this is so critically important. You have to help employees understand how to build a social network, both inside and outside the workplace. HR professionals, learning and development professionals, we are wired to network. We are all typically pretty connected to other people, both inside and outside our organizations. You know, Society of Human Resources Management, Human Resources Management Association, HR.com. We have networking associations all over the place. And human resources people, if you go to SHRM's national show every year, any of the regional shows, these are networking meccas. People are friendly and outgoing. They talk to each other. HR people are wonderful at this. People, you know, we're wired to do this stuff. This is great. Not all of our employees are. Not all, but so it's going to be important to not assume that everybody will do this naturally. So we have to help our employees do this. Going back to what Jessica said, make sure that our new employees know who they can talk to and connect with. And if we have a new architect or a new engineer or new operations people, make sure we understand who can help them outside the organization as well. So make sure you introduce them to key people and build enterprise-wide social networks so people can make the connections within your company to get them the help and support that they need. I love this statistic. We mentioned earlier that 1 in 3 new managers fail. Here's 60% of managers who fail to onboard successfully cite failure to establish effective working relationships as a primary reason. So there you go. It is important. We need these relationships for success. These are important to us. These are important to our business. So we have to take this seriously, and this has to be a part of our onboarding process. Jessica, you posted a note about an article you read at CLO Media, ESN. Tell us about that article. This is I saw this article too, but tell us about it.
Yeah, it's just a nice overview. I mean, it's pretty foundational. It's talking about, enterprise social networks. So you may or may not be familiar with them, but, they stem from kind of social networks and overall social networks, so things like Facebook, Twitter, and then also from workplace networks. So you have like your SharePoint sites or shared drives or intranets. But at BizLibrary we use community, and it's basically, I mean, if you're an organization where you have multiple locations or you have remote employees, it can be critically important to bringing the relationships to work. So this is speaking, I've worked remotely for coming on 3 years in October. So if we didn't have an enterprise social networks, it would be really hard for me to feel the relationships that I feel that I have with the employees that are based in St. Louis or other remote employees that are around the country. So not only am I able to build on those relationships, but we're also able to open up the doors as far as how we're applying things that we're learning, what we've learned, and how we can share those. So it's important, and it can be helpful to kind of expand that, so from like a local level to an overall organizational level.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you speak from very personal experience about the power of enterprise social networks, and you're spot on. I mean, you and I work remotely from each other, and we collaborate continuously on projects, and we could not do it without enterprise social tools. It'd be impossible to do. Absolutely impossible. Great comment from Tracy. Jessica, you want to share that with the group, because this is a fabulous suggestion.
There's actually two good comments that I'd like to share. One's from Krista. So she, in explaining the what and the why, she says she's fought that battle many times. The trouble is the trainers they're order takers, so they send the message that the how is quick and therefore it must be okay. So it becomes a short-term gain, long-term catastrophic loss, unfortunately. So balancing that quick need to accelerate the training how to really taking time, or at least get your employees to understand the why. And then the ad from Tracy is, it's so important for new employees to know who to go to for questions, help, etc. We assign a mentor to all new employees, which is one of the kind of the best practices that we'll talk about shortly, but definitely agree with both of those comments.
Yeah, and I saw Krista's note there about the tons of neuroscience supports the teaching of the why. It helps increase learning and reduce the learning curve. Absolutely correct. Okay, so the next of the best practices is to make sure that we set clear expectations and goals. I mean, how many of us have worked in a situation where we didn't really know what was expected of us? I certainly have. Before I came to Biz Library, I worked in an organization that was, a group of consultants, and if you ever want to build a bad business plan, have them work in a consulting organization, because it's not bad or good, but consultants, everybody's got to have their say. So they put together this matrix organization. I reported to like 4 or 5 people. It was terrible. So remember the movie Office Space, when the guy says, yeah, every time I make a mistake, I have 5 bosses that come and yell at me about it? Well, that was kind of my life too. I never knew what was expected of me. Nobody ever said, here are your goals for this year. I felt like it was a constant moving target. It's frustrating as all get out. You have to help people understand what's expected of them and what the goals are. So like for HR, one of the issues that a lot of professionals struggle with in human resources, well, how do I establish goals for individuals in HR? Well, maybe you don't have numeric, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound SMART goals for each individual in your HR team. But it's very possible to have team-driven goals. We want to reduce complaints by 10% this year. We want to control litigation costs. We want to improve compliance. We want to improve the time to hire, whatever the goals are. And then the whole team is accountable. So you set expectations. Okay, Jessica, based upon your role on the HR team, here's what we're going to have you do. Chris, here's what you're going to do. And everybody has a role, and then everybody's mutually accountable to hit the goals. Frequently, that's how that works. And in terms, good question from Cheryl, how often should you follow up with the new hire and expectations? I was going to get to that. And once you set the expectations and build in what's going on, this isn't the kind of thing that you just set up and just leave alone. This is where this performance measures and feedback and coaching come into play. This needs to be something that's reviewed on a continual basis, and this gets back to our final best practice, which is involving the manager, teaching the manager the value and importance of regular feedback. And we'll get to that in just a second, but that's where it gets to be really important. So when you're dealing with expectations and goals, make sure you understand the learning styles and preferences of the individual employees as you're going through things. Jessica and I work together very closely. We're wired very similarly in a lot of ways. We're also wired very differently in some ways. For instance, when I go to a website and to absorb content, I will typically look to the text body first. I will typically read through first. I'll sometimes look at the credentials or the background of the author and then read. Jessica, if you go to the same site, what are you going to look at first?
Well, hopefully it has video. So usually I'll say, to me, going through and actually reading through it is much more of a commitment than getting a teaser through the video. But at the same time, it's also helping me gain a context, so I can take things from the video that I may not be able to take from the text. So I can visually see the person that's talking or the body language of the two people that are talking. So to me, I can get more out of it from the video, and then I can continue to get more from it by reading the text. But that's just a personal preference. I don't know that it's just based on kind of how you absorb things and kind of your learning style and learning preferences.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a personal preference. You and I both tend to be very visual communicators and visual learners. I'm a little older than you, so I grew up reading primarily as my primary means of taking in information. You're a millennial. You've grown up looking at video. So it's not bad, it's not good, it's just different. So, but it's important that we have programs and you set that up. So what's the management style that this employee is going to be dropped into? What's the leadership style of the individuals? And so, all of these things are really, really important. So the next of the 5 best practices is number 4. You have to leverage technology, and you have to make sure that they have a well-defined training program ready and waiting for them. Technology is not our enemy. Technology is our friend when it comes to learning and development. Now, for onboarding, there is the need for some interpersonal connection. It is very important to welcome people, make that connection, make sure people feel appreciated, and really cement the deal. Make sure that people feel good about having accepted the offer and walked in the door. And it's difficult to do that if you omit the power and value of building that interpersonal connection. Okay, so I'd never want to discount the importance of that. And there's some conversations during onboarding that are important to have face-to-face. There's just no way around it. However, there's also an enormous amount of training that technology can help you deliver. Foundational information, information about your industry, information about your products, about your competitors, sort of compliance type training. So how are you going to deliver that to folks? Do you have off-the-shelf content? Do you have custom video, a greeting from your director? Do you have greetings from your president? How are you going to deliver the resources to people? Do you have mobile content, access to it via mobile? Do you have a learning management system? All of these things are considerations that you have to take into account as you build an effective program. But absolutely, absolutely make sure you're leveraging technology tools to your greatest advantage to really accelerate the time to get people on board. Mentoring and coaching, we already had somebody mention this as a suggestion. This is a great idea. Bringing people on board, I tend to be kind of a serial networker. I'm pretty good on my own. I'll go meet people. I'm not afraid to walk into offices and introduce myself and ask questions. I've never had a big issue with that. A lot of people aren't like that. They need a mentor. They need people to introduce them around and coach them and make sure that they're finding the things that they need to do and getting the information that they need. In a mentoring coaching program is a fairly low cost but high impact addition to effective onboarding programs. This is a great way to share knowledge, support, and resources. Frequently, organizations that do this cross-functionally have an enormous amount of success. So, you don't necessarily have salespeople mentoring and all the time mentoring. Sometimes you do have a sales coach, but sometimes the mentoring can be across functions. It can be very, very important. From Gary, should the mentor be someone other than the employee's direct supervisor? I think so, yes. The coach, not necessarily. Coaching should be supervisory. That should be a skill by the supervisor. But a mentor, sometimes you just need to, hey, I'm having trouble with my supervisor. Help me understand, I delivered this memo, and man, Chris just didn't, react to it the way I thought he would. Help me understand, well, did you start the memo off with, whatever? No, I didn't put the summary at the front. The summary is at the end. No, Chris is really a bullet point kind of guy. You got to put the summary. Oh, okay. I mean, so a mentor can, I really do believe that the mentor should be somebody other than the direct supervisor. Career guidance and feedback. This is really, really an important piece of this. Employees, now I don't require a whole lot of feedback. I just need somebody to let me know once in a while, hey, you're doing okay. But most employees require pretty continuous feedback to be successful, to feel valued, to know that they're on track. So make sure that your managers understand the importance of doing that. So as you're doing this, you've got to make sure you're approaching the right competency levels. What are the core competencies necessary for the industry and culture? You probably got that covered in the hiring, but your job family competencies, think HR, accounting, sales, and then importantly, what are the specific job role competencies, the level of mastery required for success in this specific role? Make sure you've identified that. Jessica, this is a great illustration of a learning plan that we borrowed from a client, I believe. If you want to walk us through this real quickly.
Yeah, so this is an example of how to really leverage the resources that you have available and also technology resources. So this is all, their new hire learning plan is set up almost like a certification. So basically the new hire will log into their online training center. They see that they have their new hire learning plan and they'll move through it in different stages. But the benefit of this is that it's giving them something that they can feel like they're being proactive about. So many times when you're a new hire, you feel like you're just sitting there waiting for someone to give you direction. So this can be a good way to get them into something and get them feeling like they're being productive and learning at the same time. So basically, I mean, you can do a mix. So this is a lot of different modalities. So, there's an overview of login instructions. There's a video interview from the president welcoming them to the company, the employee handbook that can kind of streamline it. They can check it off and mark it as complete instead of having to give them paper copies. You can deliver compliance. This is a great way to kind of streamline some things, so why recreate things if you don't have to? So if there's off-the-shelf content that could work for compliance training, so things like sexual harassment, or if you have ethics and diversity, and you have an off-the-shelf video or e-learning program that really resonates with your organization's goals and culture, that can be a great way to help to kind of accelerate things and also make sure that it's consistent. So if you have a trainer or multiple trainers that are delivering this, you never know that the new hires or each group of new hires is necessarily going to get the same message, because it can sometimes depend on the mood of the trainer that day. So streamlining some of these things can help. Don't want to take away too much of the personal interaction, because you still want to be building a relationship with that new hire, but there's certain areas that you can optimize and accelerate that training.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Great stuff. And so then just sort of some Microsoft essentials to wrap up some of that sort of foundational information. So good information here. And then the fifth of the best practices, the manager's role. We've hinted at this a little bit, but there's really great data out there that says the manager's role with respect to training and development is the single most important component to really delivering the goods on training impact both before and after you deliver training content. In other words, the manager's interaction with the employee after you've delivered training, the manager's ability to support what's happened, drives the success of most training programs. And we sometimes don't pay enough attention to that. So it's really important that the manager clearly understands how to communicate performance expectations to employee. We frequently promote people to managers' roles and just assume that they're going to do well with it, but we don't teach them how to communicate that. We have to teach managers about how important regular feedback is. And I don't mean an annual performance review. I'm talking about regular feedback, and not just when things go poorly. Regular feedback. Hey, Jessica, this is great. Thanks. This is super. Really appreciate you getting to that. Really liked the way you reformatted this year's Align program. Very creative, innovative use of new icons and new graphics. And by the way, that's true. I really do appreciate you doing that. This is really a big piece of driving employee engagement. I mean, teaching managers how to do it and teaching managers about the things that actually drive employee engagement. This really can move the needle for you. So, teaching about, understanding how to measure the impact of an employee onboarding program. Here are some possible elements, and this is going to vary from organization to organization, but see where you are in some of these key areas. Productivity, the time to productivity. How long does it take employees at those levels, clerical, professional, executive, various levels? Your rate of retention. What's your employee and customer satisfaction levels look like now? Once you reboot or reformulate your program, can you move the needle in those areas? How about employee referrals? That's a great indicator about how engaged your workforce is. Innovation, safety, compliance, these are all great ways to measure the impact. And this is, you're going to get access to these slides, so I am not going to go through all of this, but this just gives you impact, whether it's direct or indirect impact, and some possible places to go get metrics. This is a wonderful chart that actually runs across 3 different pages and will give you some fantastic clues and hints about how to grab some of those fantastic business impact areas. This is a wonderful bit of information. Jessica got this out of a resource called Creative Onboarding Programs, Tools for Energizing Your Orientation Program from Doris Sims, and published in 2011. Fabulous information here. Again, you're going to have these slides so you can go through this on your own and pull this together. So 3 critical takeaways for today. Onboarding and new hire training should be considered a strategic initiative of your organization, not a process that you just do when people start, not a one-off thing. Make this a strategic initiative of your employee development program. This can really impact the bottom line. Successful programs are good for the bottom line and the overall health of your organization. This matters. The 5 best practices: plan ahead, hire for fit, integrating your company's goals and culture into the program, outline expectations, utilize technology and online resources, and for heaven's sakes, get your managers involved. If you do those things, you have a great chance to make an impact. Jessica, I'm going to be quiet and let you wrap up, and if we have time, we'll take a question or two.
Great. Sounds good, Chris. Lots of great questions, so I hope that we'll be able to get to some of those. So continue to send those over through the question box located within the control panel. Just a quick wrap up, BizLibrary provides more than 7,000 employee training videos and e-learning courses to help you streamline the onboarding process. So the collection includes more than 7,000, so that includes things like leadership and management, sales and customer service, desktop computer skills, and some of those compliance courses that I mentioned earlier. If you want to try out any of these resources, just let us know through the quick poll. I'll send you a follow-up email that'll include a link to these preview videos here. They're full videos actually that you can access right away if you want to do a free 30-day trial. All right, so I'll leave that up. Chris, I posted some questions in the chat. I'll go ahead and grab one, or if you have one you want to start with, we can also do that one as well.
You pick.
All right. Question from Tess. So she asks, how do you ensure that all new hires are getting consistent onboarding when there are multiple mentors and possibly trainers delivering this?
Oh, that is a really tough question. Well, one is you have to do a good job of training the trainers, making sure that you lay out the expectations for everybody and make sure that you have certain high-level points that must be covered by everybody. That's the first thing. Second, incorporate as much online content as possible into that program so that you know this content has been delivered in a specific and consistent manner. Those would be two things that I think would help ensure some consistency of the program. And then the third thing is to have consistent sort of after-action meetings with the people involved in the new hire training so that you're having consistent conversations with them to talk about what's working, what's not working. Getting everybody together to talk will help create a common vocabulary and a common set of references for everyone, which would help ensure consistency.
All right, next question from Tracy. She asks, how do you determine who a mentor should be for a new hire?
Another really good question. Tracy, I wish I had a magic bullet for that because that's not, you'd think that would be a simple answer. One, I would not recommend using the immediate supervisor as a mentor. If you can, find somebody that's got somewhere between 5 and 7 years more experience within the organization. I'd say a minimum of 3 years. You'd want to have somebody that's been successful, that is at least a B+ performer. You want somebody to model good behaviors for someone. And you need to find somebody who is sort of curious and a continuous learner. And then you'd want to try to match up personalities as best you can. Beyond that, I don't have any magic advice for you, but if you'll do those things, you have a good chance to have a successful mentor-mentee relationship. And then obviously you have to have somebody that's going to be committed to spend the time with the new hire, that will be invested in the new hire's success. There isn't any magic formula to that, but those would be the things that I would recommend.
All right, one more question. This one's from Melinda. She asks, for smaller organizations that don't have a formal training program, oftentimes the incumbent trains the new person in the role. Just a note, she doesn't agree with this. How can HR get managers to understand that their expectations will be better met if they participate in the training process to ensure that new employees understand the things that they feel is important in their role?
Ooh, boy, oh boy, that is a tough one. This really gets back to the explaining the what's in it for me piece of this. You have to sit in the manager's chair for just a minute, kind of emotionally and mentally, and kind of create a marketing message that explains the benefits of involvement from the manager's perspective. Mr. or Ms. Manager, your job will be easier if you do these things. There really isn't any other way to do it. You just have to begin to pitch the benefits to the manager of their involvement. Your team will perform at a higher level if you have a chance of making a better, bigger commission, if you have a chance of having better performance ratings if your employees. I mean, that's really how you have to do this. You have to pitch it as a benefit to the manager. I wish I could say that your managers are going to be altruistic and externally motivated, but the sad truth of the matter is most people are intrinsic or motivated about their own self-interest, so you have to put it in the what's in it for me kind of thing and explain what the benefit is to the managers.
All right, great questions today. For those of you that are attending for HRCI credit, I put a link to the completion certificate in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Just a reminder that I'll also send out a link to the completion certificate within 24 hours. So you actually should receive that in your inbox around 4 p.m. Central Time. Upcoming webinars, we have one coming up on why short video gets big results, how to measure employee training and effectiveness, and supporting the transition to new managers. So all of the upcoming webinars are on our website at bizlibrary.com/webinars. So hope you'll consider joining us for a future webinar. They're all free and HRCI approved. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, Chris, for presenting, and just again, thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah, thanks for the participation, and we hope to see you on a webinar in the future. Thanks, everyone.